What's up, everybody? Good late morning. Hope you guys are doing well. And we're getting near the end of the line, people. We are getting near the end of the line when it comes to offensive coordinator candidates that I can think of. There are more out there, obviously. I mean, there's basically an infinite number out there, or practically an infinite number for my purposes. But we're getting near the end of the names of note that I can come up with. So today is going to be the final day where I make these videos as a regularly scheduled thing. So this video and the next video you see go live on this channel, that's going to be the end of it. So enjoy it while it's here. I know a lot of you guys were ready for this to be over. I will do another offensive coordinator video if the Seahawks interview with someone who I hadn't talked about already. But at this point, that seems unlikely. It does kind of feel like the Seahawks have zoomed in on three guys they like. They like Kubiak, they like Fraley, who they got a second interview with, I want to say yesterday, maybe it was 2 days ago, and then they like Udinsky. So if there ends up being a new candidate emerging, and it's somebody I haven't talked about, then I'll make a video about that. But barring that, this is going to be the last couple of videos. So enjoy it if you like these videos. If you don't, then it's almost over. One quick note, I am going to be streaming on Bleacher Report tonight. For those of you who don't know, I'm doing a weekly show on the Bleacher Report this year, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. So download the Bleacher Report app on your phone and be prepared for me to drop a link to the show a little later today. And I'll drop it as the show's starting as well. And we should have the opportunity to go for about a half an hour just talking about the final days of this offensive coordinator search, because I am getting a pretty good feeling that it's going to end in the next couple of days. It might even end today. So we're going to go ahead and put a bow on things, and hopefully the team is on the verge of making their decision. So yeah, download the Bleacher Report app, head on over there, give me a follow, or just wait for me to drop the link, and when you get the link, you'll be able to follow me from there. So Bleacher Report app, get it, and that's the only place you're going to be able to watch these shows. Also, please like this video if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Click the bell for notifications. Become a channel member for $2 a month. Those are the best ways to help support the channel. Let's go with one of our final candidates we're going to take a look at. And I'll tell you, it's not an overwhelmingly amazing resume, but Marc Trestman has one of the deepest resumes of any offensive coordinator that we could get. This guy's been around forever. This guy, I filled 2 pages this resume, and I could have kept going. I didn't get to the end. I just stopped because I was like, well, I don't want to go back into like the 70s. But Trestman's been around forever, so there is definitely appeal here, even though I will acknowledge that some of his experience is not going to be all that relevant for our purposes. 69 years old, so he's getting up there in age for sure. He's been around since before I was born. He's been coaching in the NFL since before I was alive. So there is a little bit of a possibility that he's just ready to retire, but it seemed like he had retired after a stint with the Tampa Bay Vipers in the XFL in 2020, and he came back being offensive assistant for the Chargers. So you can't tell me he's completely done, and if he got offered an offensive coordinator job, I think he would take it. So let's go ahead and work backwards here. The Chargers' senior offensive assistant in 2024, their offense was above average. 11th in points, 12th in EPA per play. I mean, that's not good, but it's above average. And it's an offense that made some strides from 2023. So I guess he did a fairly good job. Again, it's not his show. He's just a senior offensive assistant, but it's a nice little welcome back to the NFL. You have to go back to 2020 to find another job for him in football, and it was with the XFL Tampa Bay Vipers. He was the head coach and general manager. So a lot of responsibility, but the XFL only lasted 5 games and then had to fold. Vipers only went 1-4, so they were pretty bad. But they were 3rd in points per game. Now, there were only 8 teams, but 19.6 points per game was actually decent for that iteration of the XFL. Now, before then, he took a year off and coached 2 years for the Toronto Argonauts. And the thing to understand with Marc Trestman is he is one of the better CFL head coaches of all time, but he didn't really have a lot of success in Toronto. 2018, the bottom fell out. The Argonauts went 4-14 with him as the head coach. and he ended up departing after that. And they had one of the worst offenses in the CFL, 20.5 points per game, eighth out of 9 teams. There are only 9 teams in the CFL right now. So not good. The year before was better, 9-9. That's okay. Almost 27 points per game, which was sixth, which isn't great because there are only 9 teams, but it's a little bit better. So not great there. The last time he was in the NFL in a significant role, which is where we're looking at really, was when he was the offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens from 2015 to 2016. So these 2 years, unfortunately, I have to admit, were not very good years for the Ravens offense. This Ravens team had just come off of a Super Bowl win with Flacco a few years prior. The year before, they made, I believe, the divisional round. So it was a respectable Ravens team, and both years Trestman was there, they just spinning their wheels. 2016, they were 21st in points scored, 21.5 points. The year before, they were even worse, 25th in the league, 20.5 points. And again, they were better before this, so not good. And then, of course, there's his stint as the head coach of the Bears, 2 years, 13 to 14. 2014 was bad, didn't even score 20 points a game. And this was right after they gave that monster contract to Jay Cutler. So he theoretically had a decent quarterback and nothing cooking. Year before was great. There was a lot of Jay Cutler, but there was also a lot of Josh McCown, if you remember this year. That Bears team, lot of Josh McCown playing quarterback, and they scored almost 28 points per game, second best offense in football. And the only reason why they weren't first were because Peyton Manning's Broncos were breaking every record in NFL history, basically. So the stint with the Bears obviously ended poorly, and neither year did they make the playoffs. Now, here's the good stuff, really, with Trestman. And I know this is going to seem like kind of a meme, but no, really, he is one of the greatest coaches in CFL history. Montreal Alouettes. He spent 5 years with the Montreal Alouettes. And over that stint, Montreal won at least 10 games every year. They won 15 games one year, which is crazy good, 15-3. Remember, 18 games. And 3 of the 5 years, they had the number 1 scoring offense in the country. I don't know what they say in this. I guess they would just call it league, but it was the number 1 offense in the league. He had one offense that was second in the league, and then he had one that was more mediocre, fourth. They only had 8 teams at this point, but you can see how good his offenses were when he was there. A lot of winning, a lot of points, and I think they won the championship like 3 times. So he's great at this. I don't know if we want to take anything away from that, but he is considered to be maybe the greatest CFL coach of all time. Before his stint in Montreal, he was a consultant for the Saints in 2007. Saints that year had a slightly above average offense, 12th in the league, 23.7 points per game. That was one of those Sean Payton teams, of course, so he's running the show there, but nevertheless, Trestman's on the staff. Go back to the previous couple of years. He was an offensive coordinator and quarterback coach for the NC State Wolfpack. So we're going to college football now. He spent 2 years with the Wolfpack. Both years, the Wolfpack had a bad offense, barely or not even top 100 in the country. 17.5 points per game, 21 points per game. And his quarterbacks were Daniel Evans, who was bad, Jay Davis, who was bad, and Marcus Stone, who was bad. So never really had a good quarterback here, never had much of a chance, and his offenses were just plain not that good. He was an assistant head coach with Dave Wannstedt in Miami for 1 year before that, 2004. Miami was terrible this year, 4-12, and they had a terrible offense, 28th in the league, barely over 17 points per game. Now, the Oakland Raiders, this is one of the places where he got positive press initially, I think. And I know things slipped away from him over the next few years, but the Oakland Raiders, during his time as the offensive coordinator, had a big positive flash offensively. 2003 was bad. They had one of the worst offenses in the league, not even 17 points a game, 26th. But 2002, they averaged more than 28 points a game, second in the league, and they made the Super Bowl with Callahan at head coach and Marc Trestman as the offensive coordinator. So that was definitely a feather in the cap. And the year before that, by the way, he was the quarterback coach. 2001, he was the quarterback coach as Rich Gannon was, I don't even want to say reviving his career. He was breathing life into his career that was never there before. Rich Gannon played some great football at the tail end of his career. It was almost Geno-like in how he rediscovered or discovered in the first place the ability to play at a high level of football. Almost a 96 QB rating, 66 completion percentage, over 4,000 yards from scrimmage, almost 30 touchdowns, 9 picks, and he was good. And Trestman gets credit for that, I think. It was Trestman and Harbaugh that were his quarterback coaches, actually. Jim Harbaugh was the quarterback coach for a little bit when Trestman became the offensive coordinator here. Okay, going back further, now we're back into the 90s. It's getting a little bit tough. And to be honest, we're starting to see some stuff that we don't like. He was the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach for the Arizona Cardinals from 1998 to 2000. And the offense for the Cardinals was okay in 1999. I'm sorry, 1998. But other than that, yikes. One of the worst offenses in the league. 2000 especially, barely over 13 points per game. And of course, after this, he gets let go because what are you going to do to an offensive coordinator when you're 29th in the league and not even scoring 2 touchdowns a game? Jake Plummer was the main quarterback, 21 interceptions, not even 57% completion, 66 rating, pretty bad. Dave Brown was the backup, not much better. Year before that, they were actually ranked lower in points per game, 30th. And Jake Plummer was even worse, like really, really bad stuff. This is quintessential, like bad 90s quarterback stuff. 9 touchdowns, 24 picks. Dave Brown as a backup, not better. So really, really unimpressive. 1998 was the one year where things went okay in Arizona. They were 15th in points. Plummer put up okay-ish numbers, better than the numbers he put up the next 2 years. 75 QB rating, ran for over 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. You had something for a little bit there, but it never really got past what they were able to accomplish in 1998. So it was a little bit of a burst of positivity, but it was not a good run for him, if we're being honest. A year before that, he was the quarterback coach in Detroit for 1 year with Scott Mitchell. Scott Mitchell played okay, almost an 80 QB rating. Remember, this is the 90s, so numbers like this that look pretty bad by today's standards were pretty good back then, or at least decent, right? And the Lions, of course, during the 90s were occasionally a pretty good team. I think 97 was one of their decent years. The year before that, he spent some time in San Francisco. He was the offensive coordinator in 1996, and they were great. They put up a ton of points. Now, I think Seifert was the head coach then, so people are definitely going to be inclined to give him more credit, but more credit than somebody like a Trestman. But 1996, the Niners offense put up almost 25 points a game, 3rd in the league. Excuse me. And the year before that, he was the offensive coordinator and the quarterback coach for the #1 offense in football, over 28 points per game, almost 29, first. And look at the quarterback play. Steve Young had a pretty good year, and he missed a lot of time this year, but 3,200 yards, ran for 250, 92.3 rating. Elvis Gerbach filled in great for Steve Young when Young was hurt. 1,500 yards, 8 touchdowns, 2 rushing if you want to count it, 5 picks, almost 70% completion, which is really good for back in the 90s. So he actually did really well in San Fran. They just weren't quite able to get past the Packers. And the Super Bowl they won the year prior, 94, was the only one they were able to win in this era. So that is the stint with the 49ers. It's good. Okay, we like that. He actually was out of football for an extended period of time before 95, however. He was, I think he was working in like municipal bonds or something like that. I read an article earlier today, but I can't remember exactly what it was. It was some kind of financial job for a few years. But before that, he was the quarterback coach for the Minnesota Vikings. And, I mean, I guess he got okay play out of Rich Gannon in 1991, but this was early stage Gannon before Gannon became a really good player at the end of his career. And then you had Wade Wilson, who was really, really bad. Nothing to speak of this year. And then the year before that, 1990, Rich Gannon was, 69 rating, put up some points, but made a lot of inaccuracy, a lot of bad decisions. And Wade Wilson was better, but none of these quarterbacks really played well. You wouldn't look at any of this and say, yeah, I think this is good. I think this is something that I can point to on my resume as a positive. Before that, 1989, he was the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach in Cleveland after they fired Marty Schottenheimer. He got to be the OC for 1 year, and the Browns' offense was about average. 21 points a game was 14th. And by the way, this is the year I was born, 1989. So we've gone back really far, probably too far, but let's keep it going. And as the quarterback coach, Bernie Kosar had a pretty decent year. Bernie Kosar was a good quarterback in his era. 18 touchdowns, 14 picks, 59.1 completion, 80.3 rating for the era. That's workable. Now, the year before, when Marty Schottenheimer was still there, he was just the quarterback coach. And being the quarterback coach for the Browns in 1988 was not easy. Kosar played a part of the season but got hurt. He was playing pretty okay but got hurt. Then you had some Mike Pagel, who played pretty bled. Don Strock, who was a little workable, decent. Gary Danielson played a little bit and was pretty lackluster. So it was a revolving door at quarterback, man. I guess you give him some credit for holding it together. The year before that, Tampa Bay quarterback coach, 1987. Mostly this year was Steve DeBerg. 1,900 yards, 14 touchdowns, 7 picks. Pretty good, honestly, for the era. And then there was also a little bit of Vinny Testaverde, who was terrible, incredibly inaccurate, 60 QB rating. Just typical early era Vinny Testaverde stuff. I think this was probably the point where people started to give up on him. And the earliest I'm going to go would be his stint as the running backs coach for the Minnesota Vikings from 85 to 86. Nobody really stood out for the Vikings running back room during this era. You had Darren Nelson. He had like a 900-yard season 1 year. That's about it. Alfred Anderson, Ted Brown, Alan Rice. It was unremarkable. But that's it. I mean, we could go back a little bit further. I think he spent a little bit of time with the Miami Hurricanes. But that's the resume. But that is as full a resume as you're going to find for anybody who's still coaching. And look at all these places where he was the offensive coordinator. He was the offensive coordinator in Cleveland, offensive coordinator in San Francisco, Arizona, Oakland, the Wolfpack. He's probably calling plays in the CFL, I would assume so, calling plays for the Bears, the Ravens. I mean, there's something to be said for all that. Now, not all of it's good. In fact, quite a bit of it is pretty bad. So I understand why people aren't necessarily going to be persuaded by any of this. But he knows what you can get away with and what you can't get away with in the NFL. Whatever there is to learn, he's learned it. Now, I don't think that's very persuasive to me, because if you look at the recent experience, a lot of it is outside the NFL. He took about an 8-year break between coaching in the NFL, from the Ravens to the Chargers. And he spent a lot of the late 00s and early 10s coaching in the CFL. So you have to go back really far, like almost 2 decades, to find his really relevant experience. And I think that's going to be a problem. I think that's going to be a holdup here. Like, the game has changed so much. I don't really care if you were a play caller in the 90s. I don't care if you were calling plays in the 80s. That's not going to help me now. If anything, that means you might think you know the wrong lessons. So this one's really hard for me. I can't deny the appeal. I can understand why this might be intriguing after the Ryan Grubb experience. He's not going to Ryan Grubb it, but he might find another way to be not good enough. And I don't know. I can see it from both sides, but overall, I hope we could do better. And I'm speaking purely hypothetically, because it's not like we've interviewed this guy, but you guys know what I mean. All right. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think about Marc Trestman. And another video coming in a couple hours. Should be the final one in this offensive coordinator series, until and if we get a surprise interviewer or interviewee. Go Hawks.